There is a scene nearly halfway through Guillermo del Toro's wildly inventive reimagining of the classic story of Pinocchio, where the titular wooden boy is recruited into the circus, much to the dismay of his father, Geppetto. The circus's ringmaster, a manipulative and conniving villain named Count Volpe, attempts to claim ownership of Pinocchio, resulting in a literal tug-of-war between he and Geppetto. Pinocchio is accidentally launched onto a nearby road where he is run over by a car and killed. R.I.P. Pinocchio. But of course, his story does not end there. He awakens shortly after in the afterlife, where he is escorted by 4 black rabbits to meet none other than Death herself. Also, sidebar here, I love the rabbits. They sing a little song, one of them calls another a mook, and they are wonderfully voiced by Tim Blake Nelson. I also love Death here. She is an interesting juxtaposition to her sister, aka the Blue Fairy or Life, who we saw earlier in the film. Death, in signature Del Toro style, looks insane. She's like a griffin with a double snake tail, an unmoving face that may or may not be a mask. Her horns and wings are covered in eyes. The ominous room she inhabits, populated only by hourglasses, really adds to her eerie mystique. I would say that this is a unique depiction of death personified, but Del Toro has actually done this before in his 2008 film Hellboy 2: The Golden Army, which I adore, by the way. If you haven't seen it or haven't rewatched it in a while, watch it or rewatch it. It is fantastic. But in that movie, the Angel of Death is depicted as a very cool and very creepy sort of witch-like monster with wings that, again, have eyes on them. Plus, she too hangs out in a room full of sand. Del Toro's inspiration for these designs is largely biblical. Angels were often described and illustrated as having wings covered in eyes. Azrael is originally canonically the Angel of Death, at least in Islam, but the version seen in Hellboy 2 is actually a wholly unique creation in the scope of Hellboy lore, as no such character appears in the source material. As for the hourglasses and the sand, they of course allude to the idea of time running out, impending doom. Death is a scary thought. Here's a statement that may trigger some existential dread. You will die. I will die. Pancake will actually never die. She's not allowed to, but dying is frightening. Which is why whenever Death shows up as a character in fiction, he or she usually takes on an eerie appearance. One of Death's most common forms in folklore is as the Grim Reaper, a hooded skeleton often bearing a large scythe or hourglass. Just about every culture has had a version of the Grim Reaper of Death personified. For example, Greek mythology gave us Thanatos and Charon. Eastern mythologies have versions such as King Yama, King Yan, and the Yosung Saja. As for Del Toro's depictions, they are 2 of my absolute favorites. And I love the idea of Death as a character in fiction and would love to tell you all about some more of my favorite depictions of Death. But first, I do have to give a quick spoiler warning for all of the different media we will be chit-chatting and yip-yapping about in this video. I have time-stamped when we will be talking about what, plus there is a full index of everything included in the description down below, which does also list the music used, but still some discussion may spill over, so here is a general spoiler warning. For the audio listeners, I will be spoiling Supernatural Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, Adventure Time, The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, Final Destination, The Seventh Seal, The Book Thief, and Puss in Boots, The Last Wish, which, by the way, goes way harder than it had any right to. Thank God for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, because the influence it had on the visuals here is obvious, and the film is all the better for it. The animation is outstanding, but also so is the writing. The script is extremely mature for a kids film, but also super fun and full of energy. This movie is just brimming with life, which is ironic to say because it is a film entirely about death. Puss is forced to face his own mortality as he gets down to the last of his 9 lives. And fun fact, one of my college roommates thought that cats literally had 9 lives. Like, he actually thought that if a cat died, it would be resurrected 8 more times. Another fun fact, while I was rewatching this movie, I completely forgot that Puss in Boots is like from Shrek. So when Pinocchio had a quick cameo for about a full minute afterwards, I was like, oh shit, they're doing a crossover with Shrek. What the hell? This is crazy. And I also just forgot how scary death is in this film. This had to have given many a child a nightmare, depicted as a physically imposing hooded wolf wielding a pair of sickles. Very cool reappropriation of the classic scythe, by the way. Death sort of marches into the film every now and then to scare the absolute stuffing out of our protagonist. I really like how he doesn't necessarily function as a force of nature or as an agent of the universe or some kind of like natural order or balance. He has his own motivation, which gives him quite a bit of agency.
Because Puss in Boots laughs in the face of death, right?
He has taken Puss's repeated brushes with death personally and now wants revenge. He is hell-bent on it, really. This death is menacing and mean, and I like how his characterization is handled quite a bit. The eerie whistling is also a great touch. The fight scenes he's involved in are also very cool looking, very well done. And of course, Wagner Moura, who gave one of my favorite performances of the past year in Civil War, pulls off some very good voice work as the character. Another one of my favorite depictions of death comes from the truly iconic and is it regularly or regularly? I'm an English major, by the way, and used to teach. I'm pretty sure it's regularly featured on this channel. Eric Kripke created series Supernatural, and no, I am sorry, I still haven't finished it. But Death, who shows up as the 4th horseman of the apocalypse, by the way, the only named horseman of the apocalypse in the New Testament, is an extremely memorable character. Julian Riching's performance is really good, and fun fact, he has played a version of Death 3 different times. I think he's just got the look, and he's got the juice, too. He commands every scene that he is in. While Death in the show isn't evil, he kind of just does his own thing and serves his own agenda, which is mostly just being very good at his job. But he's still absolutely not to be trifled with or disrespected, which is funny to say because Sam and Dean are constantly doing that very thing. Sort of, at least. I will say that Death, the character, is actually one of the few entities who shows up in the show that Dean is actually very afraid of, and fair enough. Hey, it's me from Beyond the Edit. I just wanted to interject real quick to apologize for the slow upload speed on my part. I've spoken some in the past about my mental health stuff, and it's just been tough recently, but I have started on a new medication that I think will be helpful. But anyways, my apologies. Back to the video. Thus far, I have spoken about a handful of depictions of death as a character death personified, right? Which is a scary idea. Someone actually showing up to reap your soul is an alarming notion. But in a strange way, I sort of find comfort in that. I think the concept makes dying feel a little bit less lonely. Like, whether the force you encounter at the end of your life is malevolent or not, at least there is something or someone there. This is precisely why I find death in Final Destination so incredibly scary. Our protagonists in the film cheat death. They survive an event that they were not supposed to, a massive plane explosion and crash. So shortly after, death comes to collect and reap their souls one by one. Death is in this movie. They are an active antagonist that spends the runtime murdering our protagonist in spectacularly over the top Rube Goldberg-esque fashion, but you never see it. It is an invisible, silent force. We have no idea if death in the film takes any sort of pleasure in setting up our characters' convoluted demises. There is a palpable apathy to this antagonist that really got under my skin. This is, in my opinion, the most cruel and disconcerting depiction of death, and I love it. It is so chilling. But let's also visit the flip side of the coin as well real quick. In Marcus Zuzak's 2006 novel, The Book Thief, death is kind, gentle, empathetic, and optimistic. He functions as the narrator of the story, and despite the horrors that he describes, the book takes place in Nazi Germany, by the way, he still believes in humanity's inherent goodness. I don't really have any specific examples or anything else to say about this depiction though, because I decided not to reread the book in preparation for this video. Growing up, The Book Thief was one of my absolute favorites. One of the best teachers I ever had taught it to us when I was in middle school, and I've only reread it once since, but I've never forgotten it. I was going to reread it again, but I was just worried that I wouldn't like it anymore. And I think I am just content with my memories of it, or at least my idea of what the book is. I don't know if that's like weird or not, or any of y'all ever afraid to revisit an old favorite in fear that they aren't the same anymore. Hey, it's me again from Beyond the Edit. I wanted just to share another personal update. I've been having these awful recurring nightmares where I'll be here at my desk and then like right over there on the beanbag there'll be another me, and it'll just be sitting there watching. I know that doesn't sound scary, but it is. It's terrifying. And I just don't want to see myself there, anymore. I've never really had nightmares like this before. Maybe it's the new medication, I don't know, but anyways, back to the video. I did, however, rewatch Ingmar Bergman's iconic 1957 classic film, The Seventh Seal. In the film, a knight returns to a plague-ravaged Sweden, where he is greeted by none other than Death himself, presented here as a tall and pale, ominous man cloaked entirely in black. Despite his eerie appearance, Death in the film is actually fairly friendly. He is calm but authoritative, almost kind of smug, and he really likes chess. When the knight challenges him to a game, he goes along with it without complaint. And towards the end of the film, when the knight realizes that he's gonna lose, that his goose is cooked, he pulls out the classic accidentally knocking over the pieces on purpose move. And every time I see this scene, I always expect Death to erupt into a show of fury or like an exercise of his true power or menace, but instead he just calmly puts the pieces back to where they were. I love that moment so much, and I can't think about this film without thinking about this college professor that I had. He was like crazy smart, like unbelievably intelligent. I think I've mentioned him before in a video, but he had this really weird bit that he would do where he would put this movie on. He taught it as part of the course or whatever, but for some reason, while the film was playing, he would retreat to the back of the room and just die laughing at like half the movie for some reason. And I also want to pay tribute to the sequel to Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, where Death shows up basically as a parody version of Death as seen in The Seventh Seal. And instead of playing chess against him, they play Battleship. That is so funny. That is an S-tier bit right there. Another depiction of Death that is absolutely one of my favorites comes from the Pendleton Ward created series Adventure Time. Death makes his debut appearance in the second season when Finn and Jake accidentally kill Princess Bubblegum's beloved. Hey, it's me again from Beyond the Edit. I've been too anxious to sleep. I can't see myself over there anymore. I haven't slept in like 3 nights, and I feel like I've lost my mind. I've looked in my other pants, I've looked in the couch cushions, and I can't find it anywhere. I find myself frightened of people who don't cast shadows. I mean, plant and have to travel to the land of the dead to retrieve its soul. By the way, this episode also contains my favorite joke in the entire series.
You gotta be really quiet.
Get him!
Jake!
I thought it would be funny!
But Death, voiced by the late Miguel Ferrer, whose voice work is fantastic here, is mostly just a pretty chill guy. He plays death metal, which is very funny, and also is dating Life, who he likes to make mixtapes for. I'm pretty sure his design is heavily inspired by the Whistler, who is a figure from Colombian and Venezuelan folklore. And you know, now that I think about it, maybe Death from Puss in Boots is a little bit too. At least that's probably where the idea of the whistling came from. And speaking of chill depictions of death that I greatly appreciate, the Grim Reaper from the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy is also definitely one of my favorites. The series is incredibly macabre for a children's show and also just magnificently strange. The premise, for those who don't remember or who haven't seen the show, is that a pair of children, Billy and Mandy, entrap the Grim Reaper into an unwilling servitude with them that via which happens via a game of limbo, and then they all sort of just go on adventures together. And by the way, the Grim Reaper has a Jamaican accent for some reason. Greg Earls voices Grim, and his performance is hilarious. Frankly, I think his voice work may actually be the best part of the entire show. And Gray Delisle voices Mandy, which that is one of the voices that I can recognize immediately. I forgot that she was in this, but when I was watching some of it the other day, the second that Mandy opened her mouth, my ears perked up. It was an immediate, that's Azula from The Last Airbender. And I also love Dracula in this show, by the way.
And besides, the senior citizen discount saves you $5.
Dracula ain't no senior citizen.
Fine. Then you pay for your own ticket.
Fine. Dracula will. Dracula gonna need to borrow $5.
I said Greg Earls was the best part, but Dracula is definitely a close second. Hey, it's me from Beyond the Edit one last time. So I did stop taking that medication, and the nightmares have ceased. I'm not having that anymore, and I've been feeling better, sleeping better, feeling more like myself, more on top of things, which is actually kind of funny to say because that's not really like me at all. But I hope that my cup is gonna fall over. My gosh, that was close. I'm sorry, but I hope that it lasts, and I think that it will.
Catch a falling star and put it in your